Welcome to the Soul Surgery Podcast. My name is Nikki Clinch, and I am your host. I am a maturation facilitator, teacher and coach, integrative holistic health counselor, breathwork facilitator, and author. I am the founder of the Academy of Maturation Coaching, the Alchemy of Being, where I train as many people as I can to become powerful spaces for human beings to come home to their authentic truth. Maturation is a powerful evolutionary process of dissolving trauma, breaking free of stuck patterns, and growing and healing at the taproot. Growing out of who we thought we were from the stories led by our past conditioning in order to grow and evolve into who we were born to be. In this podcast, I will be sharing many different things with you, opening up the doorways to my coaching sessions where you can witness with your own eyes how trauma contaminates our reality and how we can dissolve it, heal it at the root, and rewrite the story of our lives, reclaiming our power and reminding each one of us that who we are is wholeness. I will be interviewing some of the world's most prominent teachers in spirituality, healing, transformation, and human evolvement, and sharing with you my own teachings and learnings along the way. And above all, sharing with you my heart. The purpose of this podcast is to remind each one of you who you really are, to open up the doorway to a new possibility, to a new paradigm, to healing, health, transformation, and our evolvement as individuals and a species. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. One thing that you can do for me, if you find this podcast useful and if you love it, please do subscribe. And if you feel called to, leave a review, because reviews really matter. They help to spread the word and help to spread this podcast to as many people as we can. And lastly, if you have any big aha moments, any shifts, any insights in any of these episodes, please do share it with me. Share with me which episode it was, where in the episode it happened, and how it has impacted you and your life. So without further ado, let's get going. I hope you enjoy today's episode on the Soul Surgery Podcast. Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for coming on the Soul Surgery Podcast. It's so wonderful to finally meet you.
It's so good to be here. I know I feel like we're buddies online, and it's just really nice to see you in person and be here with your community.
I just have to tell you, when I first came across you, I didn't really know any of the books that you'd written, and I didn't really know what you did, but I felt your energy. And I felt the light and I felt the vibration that comes from you. And I just knew I wanted to sit with you. So thank you for saying yes. And thank you for being here today. So I guess I just wanted to ask you first, we're in really crazy times. These are really, really challenging times. And I wanted to ask you, how are you doing?
Thank you. I think we all should be asking everyone, right? And checking in with people. I'm doing well, and well is. Asked a friend that the other day, and she said it depends on what hour and what day you ask me, because every minute literally is different. And I'm finding we're all on these kind of emotional roller coasters. I'm finding the gift of this time. And I think that there's huge opportunities with what we're all going through. And if we can kind of approach it with an open heart and an open mind, we can see the expansiveness being presented to us. And so I'm diving in headfirst into the beautiful life challenges that are giving really to all of humanity at this time.
Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that with me. Firstly, it's just so refreshing to hear that human response. And I think it's so important that that as many people hear these human responses as possible right now. There's no right way or perfect, tidy, shiny way to do this. Like, this is hard. I remember when this all kicked off in March, and I said to my teacher, this feels like
we're just all going into one massive ceremony together.
Ah,
Um,
yes. Yes.
and I was like, I never in my wildest dreams imagined going into ceremony with the entire species at
I
once.
know, it's so beautiful how you say that because that is exactly what's happening. And in the ceremonies that I've done, one of the most important things that I've recognized is everyone is on their own journey because you're having your experience, and perhaps whichever sacred ceremony we choose to do or spiritual ceremony, you see that other people are processing, other people have life experiences they bring to it. And that has been my golden rule through this whole entire time. And it's
Yes,
helped me so much because I find whether it's the conflict we're seeing on social media
yep,
or in our own homes, there's a lot of different political views all across the world right now. People think it's different how we should be handling the coronavirus. We're seeing
yep.
so much tension, but if you recognize that we are all connected in our humanity, we are all more alike than not. That is really what's kind of
Yes.
bringing us forward. So I love that you position it that way because that's truly what is happening. We really are all going through a spiritual awakening, if you will.
Yes, and also thank you for what you just said. I think that is one of the hardest things that's occurring right now, is that every single one of us is experiencing this through the lens of our own reality. And as we go deeper into this, that becomes more apparent. Like everybody's day is so different. Like the
Yeah.
the only commonality that is occurring is that we're from the same species, and and that can
Mhm.
be forgotten so much when you're just in the everydayness of like going on social media and looking at he said this and she said that, and this is happening, and it's like, wow, hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so, thank you for saying that, because I think that is getting forgotten. you know Respecting and honoring that everybody is experiencing it
I think
through
this
their
is
own lens.
that's exactly it. It's one of the most important things, and I believe that it is going to be what pulls us through when we all get on board with that compassion for one another, that respect and love for a brother or sister, even if they have a different point of view. For example, I'm here on the West Coast of the United States, and our state, I'm in Oregon above California, went through a lot of wildfires last month. And I know
Mm,
California and some places are still being affected in Colorado, but when I was in that experience, I had some family friends who had to be relocated. And some of people I know who know people have lost their homes. And it was such a trying time. But just about a month before, there were people in the circles who had stopped talking to each other because the tension of who they were voting for was so intense. During that time, as troubling as it was, we dropped all of that and we came back to what really matters is our connection with each other, our human experience. And I had friends after that saying, it doesn't matter who you vote for. I love you. I need you. We need each other. We are here together through all of this. So I think when we drop our guards of trying so hard to be right, I think A Course in Miracles has a quote that's, would you rather be right or happy? And it's not just about happiness to me, it's about joy. But joy in itself is not about being euphoric. I think we mistake joy with happiness, but coming back to that place of you can find joy in the silence, you can find joy in the moment, you can find joy in connecting with one another is really what we're all being asked if we choose to accept that assignment.
yes, and how can we be a space for joy? How can we be a space for that wherever we go, rather than expecting it to be given to us? That's something I've really had to get very conscious about that in the last few months. It was like really thinking about the words I use, and the things I'm sharing right now. Is this creating wholeness and love? I do not want to participate in the polarization. I do not want to participate in the separation right now, because that's so fear-led, right?
Yes. And I think you said it best. I have that mantra too is I choose unity, I choose connection, I choose compassion. And that's what it comes down to is a choice we make every single day. We all have an opportunity to be sucked into the fear. And it is very manipulative. It's very controlling. This, and not just fear, anger, sadness, shame, all of that is kind of in that energy. And it's not to say it's not appropriate to express or feel your anger or feel your sadness. That's, I think, what's missing is we feel our emotions and realize once we do, so many of us feel bad for feeling the emotions. I had
Yes.
a friend I talked to the other day, she's like, I'm angry all the time and I'm mad at myself for that. And then it just cycles and then it just gets worse. But when we feel our feelings, we allow them to work through us and we can transmute them and we can send them back out into the universe healed with more love. But our emotions are channels to our direct higher self, really, if you think about it. And so by feeling them, giving yourself permission to not judge yourself for feeling them is one way we can all collectively heal too. And then ask, what is this coming up for me? Like, why am I feeling this? A lot of times, I believe everyone here who has a big heart, who's following you, a lot of times we are empaths and we don't even realize that we just picked up energy from someone else. And so I know that that's very true for me. Several years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And at the time, I was suffering from eating disorders and drug addiction. And I have since learned in part that my diagnosis, majority of it, was actually because I was picking up all the energy of all the people around me in my toxic work environment, in the city that I lived in. And it was also because I wasn't being true to myself. My heart knew, I didn't know yet, I had to catch up to it, but my heart knew that there was more for me. And I'm so glad I listened to my inner voice that day that I was diagnosed with depression that said, follow your heart. Because at first I said, I don't know what I want, but it has led me to a career of writing books. It has led me to a career and a life of authenticity, of connection to spirit. And I think that that is what we all have the path and opportunity to do right now, because the world is kind of crumbling around us. It's actually rebuilding itself, and we can rebuild ourselves along with us.
That is so beautiful. Can you share with me and with us that moment when you were diagnosed with depression? How did you get from the moment of the diagnosis to making the decision to trust and listen to your heart?
That's such an excellent question. And in that moment when I got the diagnosis, it was finally a wave of relief. I remember sitting in the doctor's office, a relief of finally there's something wrong with me that is diagnosable. And that's where I went first. And as she wrote my prescription, I felt euphoric happiness. And I started walking to the pharmacy to get my prescription filled. And as I was trying to open the door to get in, other people were going in fast. It was like a literal force field that pushed me back. And
Wow.
I kept trying, like, how are they going in? And I, for that moment, heard this loud roar in my head that said, the path for you is the inner journey. And this is not your path. And I understand that medication has its place for many people. We all have to trust what's right for us. But for me, I was trying to solve a spiritual problem or issue with a physical solution. And that would have just been putting like a Band-Aid over a broken arm. I needed to do the inner journey. So I went home that night, cried on the floor like so many nights before. That was pretty much my common everyday situation. And that night was different because I surrendered fully to the experience of life. And I surrendered fully to whatever else was out there that I didn't allow myself to tap into before. I said, I cannot do this anymore. It is exhausting to be someone you're not. I'm trying so hard to keep up with the world and what they want for me. And I haven't even asked what I want for me. And that was a turning point, because that's when a wave of warmth came over me. Today, I see it as my higher self, angels, God, like source, whatever it was. I felt so safe. I felt so secure. And I realized that I have the power to create a new life experience for myself. It's a matter of choice, and I'm going to instead stop focusing on what's not going well and how I'm stuck. I'm going to start participating in my life by creating what I want. And the inner voice said, follow your heart. And every day since then, that has been exactly how I lead my life.
Oh, I knew why. Now I know why I'm sitting with you.
I know, right? It always
Now I know
connects.
why. So, my book that's coming out next year with Hay House as well, it is called Surrender.
Yes, it is the way forward. I'm excited for you in your book.
Thank you. It's because I had the same moment. At the last day of my drug addiction, eating disorders, just the chaos of living a life completely disconnected from my truth and not listening to my heart, trying to be everything that everyone else wanted for me. And I had the same moment, the moment when I just could not do it anymore, and I surrendered. And it was the exact same experience. It was like everything just dropped, like like a wall just collapsed around me,
Yeah.
and my heart opened. And I remember saying to God, you know, teach me how to live this life.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know how to do this.
Mhm.
And then this peace came through, and that was the last day of living that way for me. And I it's so amazing to hear how many of us have the same experiences from
Yeah.
surrender. But it's not like surrender like give up. It's like
Mhm.
surrender to this picture, this story of how it's meant to be.
Yes, that's exactly it. It is. And I think so many people feel surrender is giving up or throwing in the white flag. It's so much bigger than that in the sense of it's allowing yourself to step forward and co create almost and completely allow yourself to be in this life more fully by releasing the need to control it.
Yes, participating with source, with life, with God, whatever you want to call it, but participating, co-creating.
Yes, participating. Yeah. And to apply that to what we're all going through right now, if we start participating in this experience more fully instead of trying to resist it, run from it, deny it, hate on others for how they're handling it, we can really start to create. You and I have both transformed our life by surrendering to the experience and going inward to say, what is it I want now? And what is most aligned and what is for my highest good and the good of all involved? If we allow ourselves to kind of get to this place with each day, how we show up. Am I living in love today? Am I choosing joy? Am I being in a place of inspiration and truth? Or am I getting sucked in? And there is no wrong way to live your life. We're not shaming anyone here. It's just, I know how good it feels to be aligned with who you really are. And I know how great it feels to be in that freedom of expression of love. And so I invite everyone to at least try it on, right? I know everyone here
Yes.
listening is definitely already participating in that, but we can be an example and for those around us too of that fear. It's sucking you down and it doesn't feel good. It's lowering your vibration. Your immune system isn't as strong. We can all get through all of this when we kind of allow ourselves to come together in love.
Yes. So let's talk about fear, because fear is probably the greatest issue that is occurring right now, probably the biggest virus around. How, tell me, speak, how do we navigate through fear so it doesn't suck us down?
Yeah, the way through fear is, and I think what's interesting is to recognize that almost everyone is acting from a place of fear when they are attacking, judging, shaming, judging themselves, or feeling like hopeless. And these are all feelings we should allow ourselves to feel, but just don't hang out in that experience. We have the tools available to us. We have podcasts like this. You have the books, you have the journaling, meditating, crystals, nature walks, joy sessions, cuddling with your furry friends or your children. There's so much we can do. And so it's about giving yourself permission to bounce out of that very fast. And I think with fear, we have to recognize that it is a choice that we're participating in fear, and it will do everything it can to manipulate you and control and try to bring you into that energy because it's all a vibration. If we look at everything, everything's a vibration. And so
Mm,
you have to ask yourself, what vibration do I want to participate? I'm a magnet. What do I want to attract? And if everything, fear has a very dense, low energy, and that's going to make it really hard for you to get through your day. The very first thing I would suggest, and we've probably already heard this, is to just turn off the news. Just if you
yeah.
haven't done it, don't do it. If there's any social media accounts that are triggering you, I started to realize I was following certain independent journalists and other accounts, and I felt felt empowered because they were giving me information that wasn't presented in the mainstream. But then at the end of it, it just left me with fear. So I was like, I have to look at where you are giving your attention. And so you have to be very careful that we're not falling into the slipstream of where fear tries to bring you in. How do you feel when you participate in it, whether it's a conversation with friends, whether it's, media? That's the first thing. But also recognize that fear is really the opposite of faith. And I have been able to I'm in the process of working on my next book, which is all about an unshakable inner peace. And one of the chapters is fear, or faith is freedom from fear. Because when we allow ourselves to go into faith, the fear cannot exist. It just can't. They're opposite realms. However, faith we think of religion. And I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about a belief in the power of something bigger than yourself, but also in yourself, because that power is in you as well. And that loving force is through you. So when we believe in ourselves, and we trust ourselves, and we give ourselves permission to live this life, just like you did, just like I did, just like so many, we say, yes, I matter. I'm going to make this life more worthwhile, then everything changes. So I would suggest, number one, just start revving up your faith practice by believing in yourself and believing in a power that you feel connected to.
Yes. If there was ever a time to start connecting or creating a spiritual practice, if you've never had one, now is that time. Whatever it is, God, source, spirit, whatever it is for you, now is that time to cultivate that.
Yeah.
Because that creates that holding, that bigger holding, as you say. And then, if we're really going to come out of this survival way of living, certainly this is what was for
Yes.
me, we have to have something bigger that's going to hold us.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I believe we are collectively, as you said, we're all going through a ceremony together that is actually inviting us to participate in that experience of knowing that we have a loving, benevolent energy around us at all times. And sometimes we just need to ask for help. Not even sometimes, always. Just like
Yes.
you and me, we said, I cannot do this on my own. I need help. Try it out as far as a surrender to your own life experience and ask for help, because they're waiting on, call it the spiritual support system, right? They're waiting on the sides to help us, whether it's, angels, source, beings, all ascended masters, whatever you kind of connect with. It's there for us to help us, and it wants to see us thrive. And we can thrive through this time. I'm sure you may know some people too who, the world goes into recessions or pandemics or crazy things happen out in the world, but yet they are just focusing on joy and things that matter to them, and they are thriving. They're making more money than they ever have. Their family is very much having so much great quality time together. These are choices. And I know Abraham and Esther Hicks talk a lot about that. You participate in the life experience you want, in the sense that where you put your attention is what you manifest. So I believe, and a lot of the work that I've been doing lately, is we have no control over the world outside of us. We do, because we have control over our inner world. And when you focus on your inner world, your outside world changes. So through this time, I have had moments where I will dip into the sadness, the depression, the fear, and see what's going on. But I don't have control over all of the stuff that's happening out on the world stage. My inner world is what I have been steadfast focusing on and growing the practice within inside of me. And that has transformed my outer world. I feel and see more love. I see beautiful community experiences, and I see not as much contrast. So our inner world is where we can really start to see a change.
Yes. I said to my teacher this morning, I don't know whether I'm just in a really deep peace or whether I'm in isolation. And
I love that.
he said to me, well, actually, if you're in isolation, that doesn't give you peace. So, maybe you're in peace. And I was really inquiring into it because my life has gotten so simple this year.
Ah,
I don't go many places any much anymore. I have my children at home. I spend a lot of time in this chair on the garden, and yet I am experiencing this deep peace. And And so why is that? Life has gotten so simple. I'm so moved by how beautiful it is to sit with my children and have a meal. I'm so moved by having conversations like this. I think it's such a gift to remember that joy is something that we can allow through in being in the present moment with life, you
Yes,
know.
that's
And like,
exactly it.
yes, it's
Yeah.
something to allow. It's such a
Yes.
gift.
That is exactly it. I wrote a book called Joyseeker, and
Yes.
I think a lot of us talk about we mistake joy with happiness. And I think the first thing to go when we're not in control of our life, March hit and we were wondering what was going to happen. And the first thing we go into survival mode and we forget joy and we forget happiness. But that is actually the thing, as you said, we allow it and that changes everything. Joy is not happiness. Happiness is a fleeting experience that we also tie to things outside of ourselves. I'll be happy when, right? When I get the new car, when I lose weight. But what we're realizing now, you nailed it. So many of us are having an opportunity. I sit in the park and watch clouds. I haven't done that since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I am so joyful. And my life is simple now. I used to travel like I was a world traveler. And although part of me is really grieving not being able to go to other countries, I have never found such peace in being in the moment. And it is because we allow joy, but we realize what really matters in life. That's what's happening right now because we've been on this go 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 train as humans, like go do, make sure your calendar's full, have another project, always be achieving. But it has exhausted us as a human race, and we are not able to sustain that level of push. And so many of us now can relax. And in that relax, we surrender and we release into, as you said, and what I say in the book, Joy Seekers, joy isn't something we chase, it's something we allow. And it happens in the present moment. And that is something we all have the power, no matter what is going on outside of your door or what's going on in the other room. Right now, in this experience, you can allow it by choosing it. And it's a beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful process and way to live your life. You
yes.
start to relax more, you feel healthier, you have a better outlook, you're much more compassionate to others.
Yes. I remember in March when my daughter's school closed and literally London just went quiet. Everything shut down overnight. And it was so big that every day around 5 o'clock, it was interesting. It was always around the same time. The grief would hit me and I would just start crying in the kitchen as I was making dinner. And I would allow myself, I would literally sit on the kitchen floor and just sob. And then we would sit together and have a meal. And we started this practice as a family where we would all sit together and one by one we would go around and share how we felt and then share what we were grateful for. And there was my 7-year-old, and then there was me and my husband, and my little baby who can't, he just gurgles away. But it's become a ritual. And my goodness, I
It's
can't remember
amazing.
the last time we did anything like that as a family, you know.
Yes, that's so
Just
beautiful. And I love that this is what's the power is in how we are showing up for our children too right now. And giving them permission to share their feelings is the greatest gift, allowing them to say you matter and you belong. I know the world seems crazy. I mean, I keep thinking, imagine what it was like if we went through this at their age. And so the best thing we can do is hold that space and come together. I love that you're doing that. And I've been doing that with my family and friends as well. And you nailed it too, because gratitude is, of course, one of the best ways that we can really show up right now by focusing on what is well. And I think sometimes when it comes to joy, we hear the word joy, we say, how dare I focus on my joy when there's so many people suffering or there's people dying or when that situation's happening, I will not go there. But when we go to gratitude, that allows us to open up into embracing the moment and appreciating what we do have. And joy is a gift in the experience of feeling life. When we allow ourselves to be in our life, joy is inevitable. And I
yes.
know Abraham and Esther Hicks talk a lot about joy being the highest vibration next to love. So why would we not want to be there? Even in the times of chaos and destruction and doom and gloom, we can choose to be in a place of showing up with light and love. And that is all that joy is. It's light and love, and you expressing yourself as you came here to be.
Yes. Oh, if that was the one big lesson that humanity gets to learn, that would be a remarkable learning, that actually what we thought we needed to give us joy was an illusion, and it is right here, right now, available in this minute.
Yes, yes, right here talking to you is so joyful. And there's not a big show. It's not like we're on a stage, even though we've done that in the past and we missed that. But here we are. And you're right. Joy is in the moment. We allow it. We just invite it, and we are it. It is already an expression within us. And, part of the human experience, if you will, is to recognize that we're like in this big school. It's a lot of lessons presented to us. And I've been doing something recently that's been very enjoyable in the sense of it's a new perspective. And I've been looking at the lesson of the coronavirus that is affecting everybody on the planet in one way or another. And I've been thanking it. I've been looking at the politicians that I don't understand or used to not really want to even talk about. And I've been thanking them for their lessons. I've been looking at friends who don't talk anymore because of whatever reason. And I'm looking at it through a lens of loving compassion, because we are all on this earth doing our part. And so if we look at the coronavirus, I like to call it a she, it's very, makes it a little more personal. Some people can fear this and run away from it, or we can see it as an opportunity for us to come together and learn and teach. Now more than ever, we have this experience. It's interesting because, as you said, we were isolated. March, some people are going back into isolation. But I believe that isolation is also an opportunity for sanctuary, and we don't give ourselves an opportunity to take time for ourselves, whether it's self-care and self-love. So the fact that it kind of pushed us into this whole experience of isolation so we could look at ourselves and ask, who am I really? What do I want? The first three questions I asked myself when I was on the floor crying in 2009 when I was diagnosed with depression, and I said, I can't do this, and my voice said, follow your heart. I said, who are you? What do you want? And what can you do today to get there? Every day, if we all ask ourselves these questions, and it starts pulling us forward. So many of us say, I don't know who I am. I've been living what the world thinks I should be. But if you start to chip away, it's almost like we're an onion, you peel off the layers. Right now, we have an opportunity to really say, well, what does bring you joy? And for me, when I was a kid, it was literally laying in the park looking at clouds. So I've returned to that. It's hugging my dog, going for extra long hikes with my dog, writing, right? I've created a career out of that. So go back to what you really love and allow yourself to do it more. We have the time, many of us, to do it.
Yes. Well, I mean, when I was looking at your book and I was looking at your work, purpose and intention is such a big part of it as well. And coming back to what you just said, who am I? What do I want? And what can I do today to move towards that? If there was ever a time to ask those questions, it's now. When everything you thought was the way it was going to be is breaking down, now is the time.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is what I've seen a lot of over this year is people wanting others to do what they think is right and pushing their ideas and beliefs. And then it's just causing a lot of cancel culture and all this. If we recognize that every single human has their part of the puzzle, and if we do our part, we start to show up. And so, what does that mean when I say, who am I? What do I want? And what can I do today? Maybe today you feel very inspired to take a stance about a political or justice issue. So today, where do you feel guided? It's not necessarily about who am I on this big world stage. It's just today, how am I going to show up more in this, and where do I feel called? And so, it looks like a lot of different things, but allowing yourself to be who you are, allowing everyone else to be who they are, not trying to change them or needing them to get on board with you in your path. Just keep doing you. And if we all do that, we will realize we all have a part to play in this.
Yes. So I'm really curious because I saw that Joyseeker came out last year. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So when you were writing it, I mean, sorry, when did it actually come out in 2019?
So it came out a year ago in October in 2019, and I wrote it the previous year in 2017.
So it came out, and then we moved into 2020, and then the world just went.
Totally. I know. It's crazy. Yeah,
It
and
felt
it's
that feels
interesting.
like divine timing. That's
I
amazing.
Yeah, well, I would think that the book itself is such an opportunity for us because everything we've talked about today is in that book as far as showing up for your purpose, your passion. The book is how to let go of what's holding you back so you can be who you're meant to be. And I think right now so many of us are trying so hard to kind of hold on to what was. And as we move forward, it's very important to say, I deserve to feel good in my life and I allow
Right.
joy. And so this book is kind of a roadmap for that. And it's a beautiful experience. And I love being an audiobook author as well. This is my fifth book that came out. And so I got to
Wow.
read. And that book, I take people through different experiences of joy. And I traveled the world as I wrote the book. And it takes you on this like really this beautiful journey to get back to your heart. Drop from our head, the overcritical, the one that's saying you're not good enough, you're not where you're supposed to be, life is so hard, into your heart that says everything is as it should be, you matter, you belong, and joy is your birthright.
Hmm. When I was looking at your book, there was this quote that you wrote when you read the study on people's biggest regret. Oof. The
Yeah.
biggest regret of the dying. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And I wish that I had let myself be happier.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, that changed everything for me when I read that because at the time I was going through a very heavy dark time because I was grieving the loss of my dog who I rescued at the time, who helped pull me out of depression. And I was also in a place in my career where I was chasing outside of myself. You know, the next book deal, the next, coaching package, whatever it was. And it wasn't until I read that where I said, "Well, what is it you really want?" And that study was done in the UK, and it was done with a collective group. And one of the questions I ask people when I have coaching programs, one of the first questions I ask them is, if your future self had a message for you, what would it be? And that's
hmm.
aligned to that study because it's like if you were to flash forward, what would you tell yourself? And the future self exercise is something that actually helped me. I remember being depressed, crying on the floor, and I visited myself to where I am today. Of course, like didn't know the world would look like it did in 2020, but I would be writing books for a living, talking to people, sharing my experiences. And that pulled me forward in that joy. So visit your future self. But everybody, no matter who or what the situation is they're coming to me for, it's always, you're doing a great job, keep going. It's always around the idea of you matter, you're awesome. And so we just don't allow ourselves to tell ourselves that, hey, we're doing a really good job at this life thing. No one gives us a roadmap for this. And we beat ourselves up. And so I have a book prior to that, The Self-Love Experiment, that actually in this time has really shown up even greater because I feel like it's that whole idea of, if the plane's going down, you're going to take care of yourself first before you can help anyone else. And I think that we are all almost being forced to really look at what self-love means for us because we have to love ourselves right now. So those two go hand in hand.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I had a really similar experience. I went to the jungle last year. I went to Peru. I returned to the jungle, and very early on in the first few days of being in the jungle, that was the biggest realization for me. I was just seeking and achieving and just getting more and more clients and more amazing things, but I was missing, being with my babies. I was missing being with my children, my husband, and I was like, wow, this isn't happiness. What am I doing? And
Mhm.
I had I had the same question. If this was the end of my life, if I ended it tomorrow, like what would I feel about this? And it's so humbling. It's like, ooh,
Mhm. Yeah.
what is important? What's
Yes.
really important? Thank
Yes.
you.
Oh, full body goosebumps as you say that. And I think that that is what, if anybody is looking for an activity, journal on that question. What is important to me right now? I have a blog on my website, Play with the World, that's about us reinventing ourselves right now, in the sense that, just as you said, what was working, what we were living, it wasn't working. And if we start to look at this time as not a crumbling and a losing out, but a rebuilding, things that fall apart because they are not built on solid ground.
Yes.
Whether it's the systems we see breaking down, or the relationships that aren't moving forward, or the career path that you're questioning, this is all for a reason. And so, as you were saying that, it just came, I've had full body goosebumps, and it was like, what is important? This is the question we all ask ourselves right now. And if we ask ourselves and take steps, inspired action in honoring that and living our day with what is most important to us, then we will make it through this with so much more grace and ease and joy.
Oh, Shannon, thank you. I've just loved speaking with you and sitting with you, and this is going to be such a gift for everybody who's listening. So thank you so much for your joy. You really are joy. You're just like, you literally have like golden light like shining off you.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you, and it's an honor to connect with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.